Hello, Miami. This is 305 Sports Now, your home podcast for all things Miami sports related. I am Will, and joining me today in this episode of this podcast is my good old friend from the ATL, Mr. William Quintero, and we are going to pretty much give you a playoff review of the Miami Heat in regards to the series of the 76ers and the Boston Celtics. Hey, so Will, I got to ask you a question. Are you hurt? Are you still hurting? Because I still am.
Uh, it was tough, man. It was tough. I guess I guess what helped me, kind of get over it was, just kind of being, it coincided with me being on vacation.
Okay.
So being on vacation, was I guess a good thing, and that I was out of the country, so I was able to kind of disconnect and just kind of turn the page a little bit quicker than if I would
Yeah.
have been
Yeah.
staying.
You were in Italy. You were in Italy. Was that your first time?
Well, it's first time, yeah, man. First
Uh,
time.
how'd you how'd you
Wow,
like it?
loved it, man. Went to Rome. I was there for 8 days. I spent half the time in Rome, half the time in Naples.
Oh, nice, nice. Which did you like better?
Oh, Rome, hundred
Rome,
percent.
definitely. Okay. So, did you find the locals appealing?
Yeah, I did. I definitely found the locals appealing. Everything about it, man. Everything about Italy was man. The sights, the food, the people. Um, I had a good time. I definitely had a
That's
good time.
that.
So that kind of helped me, get over it, and not really have to dwell on it as much as if I was home, and having to watch ESPN and updates on my phone and everything. Um,
Yeah.
it was tough. It was tough because I think the anytime you're looking at game seven, when you're home, you like to think of the numbers say, that the home team tends to win at a pretty high clip. Going in, I was pretty confident. I don't know that I didn't have any doubt in my mind, but I was like, oh yeah, we got this. And just to see them fall short, man, it was tough for sure.
Yeah, it was tough. Piggybacking what you're saying, the home team has won 72% of every single game seven in the playoffs. That includes the NBA Finals as well. So I was also confident that the Miami Heat could probably pull it off, even though no one was giving them a chance. Everybody on ESPN, with the exception of maybe a couple talking heads, thought that the Heat could pull it off. But most people on ESPN gave the basically the series to Boston.
Yeah.
But one thing about we'll get more into the Boston series in a few minutes or so. But one thing about the season is that I've talked to my friends and stuff like that. Like the Heat kind of did overachieve. The Miami Heat were expected, as early on in the season to be no more than a fourth or fifth seed.
Exactly.
Coming into the playoffs, and the Miami Heat, were well defined as the number one seed in the Eastern Conference, and they literally rolled the back of Jimmy Butler, rolled the back of guys like Tyler Hero, who was the sixth man of the year. Bam and his defense as well. But one thing I do feel that we had in the regular season, and even throughout most of the playoffs, that we were missing in the Boston Celtics series was the shooting. The Miami Heat. Everybody talked about how Miami's offense wasn't enough, but Miami actually was one of the top 10 teams in 3-point percentage throughout the regular season. Against Philadelphia, they lit up Philadelphia. I mean, for the most part, even in a losing effort, Jimmy Butler had over 30 points average per in the series. So I think the Philadelphia series, in a nutshell, after that series in particular, is when we really saw a bit of the shooting decline for the Heat. So, Will, do you think that their legs kind of like gave up, because guys like Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, they're not used to playing that many minutes on a yearly basis?
It's hard to say. I wonder the same thing, and how really the performances kind of waned over the course of the series, and when you're looking at it, again, the Heat, I think fourth in the NBA in made three pointers, right? I
Yeah.
mean, so just totally against what the norms have been throughout the course of the season, right? Really dependable in the way of shooting. I mean, even without Duncan Robinson, playing, really, I mean, he was DNPs. I mean, for stretches at a time, games at a time, and so but again, the team had really, that happened because the team was making threes without him, right?
Mhm.
And obviously him being a liability on defense and the whole deal, which of course we could touch on later on, but I mean, they had been really dependable on that end. I mean, not only had they been shooting threes consistently, they were defending the three, the whole deal, and for them to just that series, man, it was so frustrating. It was like nobody could make a 3-pointer. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody can make a 3-pointer. It was insane. And now, you have, later on in that game, obviously with Jimmy having to take that risk, because again, and that's always been the knock on him. I guess depending on what the TV show is or whatever, several knocks on him. But the big one is always like, oh, he can't shoot the three.
Yeah.
But when it got to the point where he was your most dependable 3-point shooter, you knew something was wrong. Something was out of whack a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's twofold, right? It's like, well, who else did we want shooting that? I mean, I guess, yeah, at the time, I guess the most dependable person was Jimmy, but yeah, ideally, do you want him taking, a 3-pointer to win the game? I mean, some people could debate. Yes, I guess I would fall in the no category, just based on that's not his strong suit. A little bit closer to the basket maybe, but really at that point there was really nobody else that made sense to really take the shot, if we're being honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if we're looking at the Boston Celtics, I mean, in the Philadelphia series, which we started with first, they shot the three well, and that included Jimmy Butler, right? Jimmy Butler had games where he went 4 for 6 from downtown. Jimmy Butler had an unbelievable playoff run. One of the things that I was very critical of Jimmy Butler early in the season, we talked about this, was the fact that Jimmy Butler was a jack of all trades, master of none. You know what I mean? That he does everything good, but not everything great. He totally changed my perspective in the playoffs because he was just so dominant. He was actually arguably the best player in the entire playoffs for even in the Western Conference. People had argued he was in the Philadelphia series. He was shooting at 40% from three, and he topped off his playoff percentage at 36%. And so you fall. So it's funny though, because here locally, you probably didn't hear it because you were too busy, enjoying the Roman Coliseum. But I'm going to tell you a little story.
Yeah.
All right. Israel Gutierrez, whom you know very well, was interviewed by, I believe it was Jonathan Zaslow over here locally. And he agrees with you. He felt that Jimmy Butler should have at least tried to drive in and maybe get a foul out of Al Horford and one. Okay. Joy Taylor, who's also a local over here, was on the Mark Hockman show. And she said, that Jimmy, it was okay for Jimmy to take that three because Al Horford was backpedaling, and he had it open. Look, my take, he should have taken that three. I have no problems with him taking that three. The reason, because he had hit that three earlier to end the half, in that game as well. He shot the three well. He was shooting at 36%. He had a total of 82 points, in 2 games. The guy was just flat out balling, and that included shooting threes as well. So Jimmy Butler had taken his game to another level, in the NBA playoffs, especially after, struggling, in games 4 and 5 and coming back in games 6 and 7 and just having a all out dominant performance. So that's why I have no issues with Jimmy Butler taking that 3-point shot. He had the spacing, he has his defender backpedaling. Now, this is where we come in. If Max Strus's shot counts, all right, Jimmy Butler does not need to take that three. And that's where I have a major problem with NBA officiating and the rules of the NBA, because that is the only sport that you can change a call like basically 5 minutes after you've already called it. I'm talking about 5 minutes like in your watch. I'm talking 5 game minutes that you change that call. And that totally changed the trajectory of the game, in my opinion. To some extent, not complete, but to some extent.
Yeah. And I'm halfway with you. Like, I definitely agree, and I think you're right on the money when you're talking about the officiating left a lot to be desired. I think throughout the course of the playoffs, even more so than just the Heat series, which obviously is the one that we were most
invested in.
But all across the league, when you're looking at the officiating and stuff, I mean, just lack of consistency and other things. But yeah, that call being made, like you mentioned, right? 5 game minutes, where you're talking about, probably closer to 10 or 12 real life minutes, if not longer. Probably closer to 15. And it's mind boggling. I don't understand. I don't understand how that's allowed. I don't understand how it is that, they okayed that. The only thing I will say is I feel like we had enough time to be able to recover from it. Um, Obviously not ideal, given the end result, right? Just one of those calls that again goes, went against the Heat. That again, it just you sit there and you wonder how could they allow that to be the case? Surely there's got to be something, moving forward. That you have to have some kind of time component to that rule, right? I mean, you're looking at, a possession or two at most, where, the next TV timeout, right, where you have enough time to go and review that. But again, you're talking about in real time, anywhere from, again, and I don't know what the math was, but who knows, 12, 13, 15 minutes, let's say, when you're talking about 5 minutes of game time, to go and change that's heartbreaking. And Spo and Pat Riley aren't going to be the type to go and call out the officials or do anything like that. It's not really their style. But yeah, clearly that was just ill-timed, and you know obviously didn't help things by any stretch. In terms of the Jimmy Butler shot, again, the school of thought there is, traditionally, is Jimmy the guy to take that shot? No, but given what he had been throughout the series, through the playoffs, and then specifically against Boston, where he was really your one dependable shot maker at that point. Again, for 3-point shot aside, he was your best shot maker. If you look at the still of that picture and where Horford is, I mean, Jimmy's got a ton of space, to hit it. It's not like it was contested, right? I mean, Horford was the closest defender. He wasn't contesting the shot. So I think, given, what Jimmy had been, I'm okay with a shot. Again, he had more than earned the right to take that shot. Again, you live and die with your best player. If he makes that shot, now you're looking at Jimmy as, that it's, I heard somebody mention the other day, I can't remember who it was. It was like a legacy shot, right? He hits that shot, and immediately now you're looking at him as, he's earning that praise as one of the better players in the NBA, let's say, and that could be kind of a broad statement, but yeah, he missed it, and we're on vacation, and then
Yeah.
and here we are, so you got to live with it, and I would have loved to have seen us match up against the
Golden State Warriors. Would have been fun.
I was really itching for that matchup, but here we are, and on to summer league, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
Going back to the Max Strus, the national guys were saying that the Heat had a lot of opportunities to make up for that situation, and I get it. In the fourth quarter, there was a stretch where the Heat missed 6 straight field goals, and so on. But my beef again goes to the timing of when they changed that, when they changed the call. One, we were down by 8, and Spo calls the timeout, and then in the middle of the timeout, they recheck the shot, and then they make it an 11-point lead. Spo probably called the timeout earlier than that. That's number one. Number two, in most sports, not to say, I know the NBA is different, but most sports, the evidence has got to be irrefutable. The NFL is notorious for that. Like if it's not concrete, the call stands. All right. And you could tell that Strus's foot was not exactly on the line. It was a little bit over, but his heel did not really touch the line. Exactly. In another sport, that doesn't count. And again, in a game where, to be honest with you, I'm sorry to say this, I don't mean to insult the Western Conference, but the East is a much more physical conference. So getting points in the East is a lot more difficult than getting points in the West. Meaning these two teams killed each other, for 7 games. Every point matters, and it just showed like every point matters. If Strus hits that shot, Butler, who probably would have gotten the ball regardless, doesn't go for that 3. I think Butler would have driven in, maybe gets the and one or hopes to get fouled, whatever the case may be, because he doesn't need a 3-point shot. He would have been up by 1. So that's just my take on how it affected the game. A bounce or two here and there. Again, with a Jimmy Butler shot, and so on. And we've come to a bit of an agreement. I know, and I understand what you're saying. We said earlier in the show that you said that is that the ideal guy. I've said it as well with you, in this podcast. I think if anything, Tyler Hero, is a sorry about that, is the type of guy that should take that shot. But Tyler was unfortunately still hampered by an injury. Kyle Lowry is, not very effective in this series, and Jimmy Butler was your best shot maker, throughout the playoffs. So that's why I agreed with Jimmy Butler taking that shot. And you know what? Like, star players go for the kill, but you don't have to take my word for it. I'll let Jimmy Butler tell you himself. Let's let Jimmy speak for a little bit. All right, folks, that was Jimmy Butler alongside Kyle Lowry in the post-game press conference of Game 7 against the Boston Celtics. And Jimmy had no reservations about taking that shot and no regrets whatsoever about taking that shot. So, Will, what do you think of his comments?
I mean, it's Jimmy Butler, right? I mean, that's him in a nutshell. I think he's got, supreme confidence in his ability, and he didn't hesitate. He wasn't going to. I think like we've mentioned. I mean, he was, unfortunately, he was the only real option at that point, if we're being honest. I mean, throughout that series, I'm a firm believer in that he just didn't get enough help. And with that being the case, there was really no other logical option to really take the shot. Again, you live and die with the result, right? He was your best player, throughout the playoffs. And you live and die with a shot. We wish it would have gone in, but at the end of the day, I mean, he's, like he said, right, his teammates were okay with the shot. He was okay with the shot. And again, if he makes it, we're obviously singing a totally different tune. But unfortunately, he missed it. And again, like we go back to, is he your best 3-point shooter? No. Is he your best player? Yes. And so with that being the case, again, you live with the result. There was no other player that really gave us a logical, that made themselves a logical option. So you live with the result. And unfortunately, it was the one, that we didn't want. So
yeah, unfortunately, the result is we're home and Boston is now playing in the NBA Finals against the Golden State Warriors. 2 blowouts, in games 1 and 2 for both respective teams. But one thing you did very well right now, William, is that you pretty much made it easy to transition into what we're going to talk about next. And what is the future for the Miami Heat? Coach Riley, had his press conference on Monday where he met with the media. Basically his famous State of the Union speech that he does every single time. The Heat end their season. He goes over some things and he talks about players and potential trades and so on and so forth. One of the things that was mentioned was what you said, is about getting Jimmy Butler help, and Jimmy Butler did not have any help, throughout the series. He insinuated that there's no way he wants to give up Tyler Hero, although Tyler Hero has been was very open about wanting to start this upcoming season. He was very honest about Tyler. He loves Tyler, but he thinks that if you want to be a starter in the NBA, you have to be a two-way player. Tyler made some strides defensively this year. We can't take that away from him. But I want to talk to you about something we visited again. We talked about previously. Let's revisit it again. I am on the Donovan Mitchell bandwagon because I think that, without mortgaging your future as a franchise, bringing in a guy that's proven and is really young at the age of 25, that's somebody that could really help Jimmy Butler. I don't agree with Kendrick Perkins. I thought what he said was really ridiculous about trading Jimmy Butler and starting over from scratch. That's not what this team wants to do. It was an asinine thing to say. And I love Kendrick personally. I think he provides a lot of analysis, and he actually likes Miami, believe it or not. But yeah, he's a total Heat guy, despite playing for the Celtics, he's a total Heat guy. But I thought he was dead wrong about this. I think so what, you trade Jimmy Butler, you bring in another guy and he's going to need help. So I think the Donovan Mitchell thing should happen if we can make it happen. I want to get your thoughts on it again. Should Tyler be packaged in that deal, or if Pat Riley could work his magic and maybe send Duncan Robinson and maybe Kyle Lowry for matching salaries and maybe another player? Do you think that's something that he could pull off?
I think first and foremost, when you're talking about, yeah, you mentioned Kendrick Perkins. Yeah, he calls the Heat, them goons from South Beach, right?
Yeah.
So he, despite being a Celtic and obviously having battled with the Heat for as long as he did, and as heated as those series always were, he's been able to put that aside, and he really does give them a lot of credit, for the style they play and everything. That being said, you know, the his assessment. I mean, how do you want to break that down, right? I mean, you're looking at it, you're going, okay, theoretically, okay, trade, trade Jimmy Butler, right? Fine. But just like anything, right? It's like, what? First of all, what are you getting back? All right, what are you getting back for Jimmy Butler? And with the Heat, it's so much about fit, more than so many other franchises, right? Because of the Heat culture and just kind of the way they do things. It's not for everybody. It's not for for the weak-minded, for the guy who thinks he's going to come in, and just because his name is John Doe, that he, or because he gets paid whatever, that he's going to come in and just, hey, something's going to be given to him. Duncan Robinson learned that this year. Just because you get paid a bunch of money doesn't mean that that means you're going to be a regular, you're going to start, or that you're going to play regularly. That's not the case. I think realistically, I don't know, now with Quinn Snyder being out in Utah, that kind of really changes things a little bit, kind of muddies the waters, in Utah a little bit. Who knows what they're looking at in terms of, it is, I don't know that, it's twofold, right? Does the coach leaving mean a rebuild? It doesn't seem like it, but I feel like they've kind of maxed out on the Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell duo. They're a team that they've been in the playoffs consistently with Quinn Snyder, but they really haven't been. It's like they get to the second round and they're out. And so with Danny Ainge over there now and stuff. I mean, obviously he's built some really good squads in Boston, and I think he knows what it takes. You're looking at it now and you're going, okay, what's the move? I mean, do we get rid of Mitchell? I would imagine Mitchell's going to bring you back more than Rudy Gobert, would, in terms of what people are willing to give up, I should say, because you're going to have to get back the exact same money. It's just, I would imagine, Donovan Mitchell's a more valuable trade option than Rudy Gobert is. Now, if you're looking at a potential trade, I don't know that, the Jazz take a package, with centered around Duncan Robinson for Donovan Mitchell. Would I like them to? Yes. Do they though? I'd really like to not give up Tyler Hero, if we can help it. Would I give him up for Donovan Mitchell? I mean, I don't know that I'd be opposed, especially now when you're looking at it, with Tyler Hero now is coming up on new contract wise, the rookie deal is about to be up. I think you have to seriously consider it, right? What's he gonna command in terms of a new deal? He's already mentioning not wanting to be a starter. I would imagine positioning himself to be able to go after something resembling a max deal. Clearly at this point in his career, I don't think, as much as I like him, I don't think he's a max player. I think he's got some strides that he's got to make. I think Pat Riley clearly likes him. The organization obviously values him. But he mentioned it, right? I mean, he's like, listen, you got to come in October and earn your starting role. This isn't just okay. And I think it's one of these situations where maybe in his mind he's like, hey, now this is the next step in the progression, right? I won 6 Man of the Year. Next step is, hey, now I start. And I guess I can see it. But with in a on a team like the Heat, it's more than just, oh, it's okay, it's now my time. Because I won 6 Man of the Year. No, you're gonna have to come in and work and camp and show that you're a starter, and then Spo is gonna reward you with it. But it's not just, oh, I was 6 Man of the Year. So now I'm gonna start. And Pat Riley mentioned that much. He's like, listen, you said it right. He's got to be a two-way player. You know how important it is for the team to play defense. If you're going to start on the Heat, you got to play defense. That's why these guys have been able to carve out a role for themselves. Guys like Strus and guys like Gabe Vincent, and all those guys, have played. They've earned their role because they've played on defense, right? And obviously now they make shots. Obviously, I mean they're good from behind the 3-point line, but it starts with them playing defense. And so Hero, despite his offensive prowess, he does have to make some strides on that end. He's, Riley mentioned it, right? He's got to get stronger. He's got to become a two-way player. He's got to be dependable on that side. And then that'll take care of itself. You take care of those things, you make those things happen, everything else is going to take care of itself. And I think everybody would agree. I'd like for Hero to start, definitely, but it's not an automatic. And so, we'll see what October brings. When they get back into camp and everything. Me personally, I would, if I'm sitting here looking at the situation now, I would expect him to be a starter next year. But we'll see. We'll see what moves they make and who's left when those moves are made, and he may be starting for somebody else. We'll just have to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's 21 years old and he has made some strides. He was a much better defender this year. That's why he had more minutes than Duncan Robinson did. Robinson, just because he's just clumsy, on the defensive side of the ball, and he was committed fouls, and guys would have to leave their assignments, basically to help him out, which is something that they didn't have to do so much with Hero, this past postseason, even, as he had some good defense even against a guy like Trae Young, who's a great scorer in the NBA. But I said Tyler's 21 years old. He's a elite scorer already, in my opinion. Like, you have to set your defense for him because he is a legitimate threat. He's not just a one-trick pony that just shoots threes. He could drive in on you. He could pass the ball. He could create his own shot. He's deadly from the arc. He's deadly from the elbow. He could even, if you allow him to get in the paint, he will score on you. So Tyler is deadly. But like I said, we talked about, like, I would like to keep him, but with Kyle Lowry being 37 years old, hampered this year, he missed a lot of time in the regular season, both with personal issues and, of course, with injury, and then a lower extremity injury like his hamstring this year in the playoffs. The Heat signed him for this situation, like at Game 7 against Boston, and he just wasn't out there enough, and he wasn't healthy enough, to bring the Eastern Conference title home. So that's something that's what I'm saying. Like a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who is a point guard, who could distribute the basketball, who could also score and set up his teammates, make his teams better, would be a good fit for a guy like Jimmy Butler, and the Miami Heat. So that's just that's just my perspective.
Yeah. And I guess my only pushback on that would be on the Donovan Mitchell side. I mean, I don't know that he's a true point guard. I don't think, I think he's more, I'd say if any, he's a combo guard, and I think he's got more shooting guard tendencies really than he is like a true point guard. But that doesn't mean I wouldn't take him. Yeah. Again, he's already, he's got that deal, that max deal that he ended up getting. I mean, he's into that contract there. We don't have to worry about, signing him to a new deal. And again, the guy can just light it up. To see what he could do in that, with a Heat jersey on, is exciting. To think about. The Kyle Lowry deal, again, man, you mentioned it, right? They brought him in specifically for the postseason, a guy who's won a title with Toronto. I mean, he was the engine, on that team. And you just health, and Pat Riley mentioned it in the press conference. He went through a lot this year. Again, and you touched on a lot on the personal side, which, I don't know how much of that really is out in terms of what really he had going on, but he missed a lot of time. Yeah. And when you look at the time that he missed, and not only him, right? When you look at, we went stretches without so many players. I'm really surprised that Spo didn't get more consideration for Coach of the Year, if I'm being honest. Not a homer pick, but again, number 1 seed in the East. And especially when you take into consideration, again, you add up all the games missed with really important pieces of that team. And again, it's even more impressive when you think about it, how well they did this year, and especially not not being expected to. And we talked about it before the show started. It was, most people had them, fourth, fifth seed, right behind, again, depending on what order you wanted to put them in, Milwaukee and Brooklyn and Boston and Philly.
Philadelphia as well.
Yeah, Philly. And so, again, most people fourth, fifth seed, for them to finish number one with as many games missed by their players, so on and so forth. Again, I'm a little bit surprised that Spo didn't get more consideration for Coach of the Year. With how he navigated that, with how he got so many guys that nobody had ever heard of, like we talked about Gabe Vincent, guys nobody had ever heard of these dudes, Struz, Gabe Vincent, you're at 7, so on and so forth. So, it was a shame, man. And again, one more thing Pat Riley touched on was, just the amount of those soft tissue injuries that just really felt like the Heat it was nonstop. It was always something. It was always a groin. It was always a hamstring. It was always a calf. It was just nonstop. Don't know exactly what that's due to. Just bad luck. Whatever the case may be. Luckily they had guys like Oladipo. They had the luxury of being able to play a guy like Victor Oladipo, who's been a star in this league, and obviously played some valuable minutes, played great on defense too. And it'd be nice to have him back next year. We'll see how that goes. Obviously he's a free agent, but yeah, I mean, just some bad breaks, man, injury wise, and again with Kyle Lowry now being out there and as valuable as he is when he is out there. He's that floor general that you need, man, to distribute the ball and set people up the right way to make shots and the whole deal, to not have him out there, no matter what people, and the other thing with Kyle Lowry is I think he's kind of a polarizing guy. I think Miami, because I know a lot of guys were like, oh my God, Kyle Lowry, like why are we doing that? And I can't say I was a huge proponent of the move. You just go, well, listen, it's Pat Riley. He knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But I can't say I was a huge fan of the move. When we first landed him, I was like, I don't know, man. For stretches, he showed why they brought him in. And again, I think he's a valuable piece when he's healthy and he's in shape and the whole deal. But yeah, it just kind of caught up to him at the end. He's not 20, he's not 27, he's 37 years old, and so, again, one more thing Pat Riley touched on is he's got to be in better physical health. Like, again, you're a pro, you won a title, like you're getting paid a lot of money. And again, no matter what you have going on, that's your first priority has to be, you got to be in shape, you got to be available. And he wasn't. It's really that simple. So when he's there, he's a reliable guy, but again, like they say, right, is the best ability is availability, and he just wasn't available. So, that's that with Kyle Lowry. So.
Yeah. Well, when I spoke with Clay Farrar from Channel 10 News, who was on the show about for the beginning of the playoffs. One of the reasons, but first of all, I like the Kyle Lowry signing, but my issue with Kyle was his age. You know what I mean? He's 36 years old. He's old in basketball years, and I know why he was brought in, because of veteran leadership. But he said that Kyle Lowry is a good blend. He's basically the good yin to Jimmy Butler's yang. While Jimmy Butler is going to be the one to yell at you, scream at you, and so on, Kyle Lowry will be the attaboy guy. Don't worry about it. You'll get him next time type. So you have the good cop, bad cop. While Jimmy's the bad cop, with his teammates, Kyle Lowry could be the good cop. And when they had the dust up, with Spo and Jimmy and Udonis, the one that kind of like calmed the press down a bit was Kyle Lowry. He was the first one that went out there and spoke to the press and basically squashed it. For the national media. So that's why Kyle Lowry was brought in. When the Heat get players, they I mean, not always, because you have your Whitesides as well. You have your Michael Beasleys, but the Heat try to do their due diligence in not only just looking at talent, but also background checking players. So that's why a guy like Victor Oladipo, fits very well with the Miami Heat, because he understands his role. And Jimmy likes the Miami Heat because he's always been embarrassed because a lot of his coaches don't push him. When he's been like, in Minnesota and Philly, and even Chicago, when it was Dwayne Wade and Jimmy versus the entire team. So the Heat, they do their research when they sign players. They don't just sign anybody. that's why I think it would have been interesting to have James Harden here. Not that I would have ever wanted him here, but that Jimmy Butler, James Harden dynamic would have been hilarious because James Harden would have pulled his hair out having Jimmy Butler as a teammate.
Yeah, you think of what the possibilities were. For a while, it seems like the Heat are linked with everybody, right?
Yeah.
Anytime there's a prize free agent out there, on some level, right? Everybody's like, oh, one of the teams involved, are the Heat. It never fails, and I haven't quite figured that out yet. But it always happens. The Heat are always connected to any big time free agent. I don't know that James Harden, again, when you're talking about talent and James Harden, again, one of the more talented, guys in the NBA in terms of scoring. I don't know that he was ever going to be a fit in Miami for several reasons.
Oh, definitely not.
Would it have been exciting, to think about it, or man, what that would have looked like. But yeah, in terms of, just on the defensive side, that's not going to jive. They're not a team that, just gives it to one guy and plays ISO ball and they don't run their team. They don't run an offense that way. They don't run their team that way. But it's you see him, right? I mean, you see why they brought him in. Just like you mentioned, he's on the sideline and he's the biggest cheerleader when he's on the sideline. I mean, you see him when the camera cuts to him on the bench during timeouts. He's in there in street clothes and he's coaching them up and he's pulling players aside and you can tell he's giving them bits of information and again helping out where he can. Kind of as a de facto coach, on the sideline. So is he well liked? Obviously, that guy's a captain. He's won a title. I mean, he's engaged with his teammates. I mean, you see him, has become famous with those guys on the post game interviews and stuff. They always, they interrupt each other and they mess with each other. So clearly the team dynamic is there. Clearly he's bought in on in the culture and the whole deal. But that doesn't there's no substitute for being out there and playing.
Absolutely.
And so do I like him? Yeah. I would not be disappointed if we went younger and in a different direction next year.
Yeah,
if I'm being honest, again, I like him, but I think we could do better than Kyle Lowry. So I guess we'll see where that takes us. But I definitely think we need to get younger. Pat Riley, again, one more thing he touched on in the press conference is he mentioned the word perfect for the roster. In terms of what the mix was, right? When you're talking about veterans and young guys, and he actually mentioned the word perfect, because there was somebody who asked him a question about would you like to get younger? He's like, we're young, we're young, but I think we have a perfect mix of veteran and younger guys. And so I don't know that there's, he's like, I don't know that there's a problem with the age of our roster. There's some things we maybe, may have to look into, but I don't have a problem with the roster makeup. Yeah. So, and again, I tend to agree with him. I think aside from Kyle Lowry, I mean, I think, you're looking at everybody else. Bam is young, Tyler's young. Jimmy isn't young necessarily, but he's not an old guy. I think the biggest thing and what we really need going forward is we need those young guys to start taking that next step. We can't, they showed it in the series. Bam just disappeared. Bam was not aggressive, was not looking to create shots. He's got to work on that offensive game. I know what he's like on the defensive side. He was clamoring for defensive player of the year. I get it. But, we can't afford to pay a guy like Bam the money we're paying him and for him to not be an option on offense. And he literally was not an option on offense.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I get against, we have Joel Embiid who's 7'1", but he should have feasted more on guys like, like Grant Williams and Robert Williams, even though they're good defenders, but he's much more athletic than they are. And we saw in 2 games that when he wanted to take over, he took over. He took over in game 3, when Jimmy Butler had to miss the second half because of his knee inflammation. He took over. He had 31 points in that game, and guess what? Miami won that game. And in game 7, he had 23 points. To complement Jimmy Butler's 37. The problem was the other people weren't making shots. but he was disruptive on the offensive side of the basketball. So I think that Bam needs to take that next step. Is that jump shot's got to get a little bit, a little bit further. He's got to be able to create his own shot in the paint. He's strong enough, to do so, and he's good enough as well. Like, he's very athletic. He could catch anything. You could throw it as high as you want. He'll catch it. He can slam it, and he needs to take that next step. Absolutely. Even though plays aren't quote unquote drawn for him, there are guys in the league that they can still get you 20, 10 a game, and plays are not drawn for them either. And Bam's got to be that guy. He can't be a peak and a valley every single game. He's got to be, a dominant force on both sides of the ball.
Yeah. The consistency has to improve just kind of across the board. Again, I like Bam. He's great on the defensive side of the ball, but he's an example of one of the players that just, really lacked consistency and really just pulled the disappearing act in that series, in that Boston series. He just was nowhere to be found. And you can't let you mentioned him, right? I get that Boston is really good on defense. Probably, the best defensive team in the league, but there's got to be some kind of shot creating ability. That's got to get better. That's got to improve. Again, he's whether it's a post up move, whether it's that mid range kind of jump shot, 13 to 15 feet, whatever the case may be, which I think he's got the ability to do. He catches the ball well in traffic. I mean, if you pick and roll with him, he can roll towards the basket. He can catch. Him and Kyle Lowry would make a good duo there. At times, but just there was nothing consistent with him. He just could not create his own shot, and it just became a real detriment, to the Heat, and he just didn't. Again, Jimmy got no help, and I think Bam is one of the people you have to look at. I guess at the risk of sounding like pointing fingers and everything, but there's reasons why we didn't move on. I think you can look at Bam as one of the major contributors in terms of not really giving the Heat much, not giving Jimmy Butler enough help to have moved on. So that's where we're at.
In the Big Three era, a lot of people felt that Chris Bosh didn't earn his money, but Chris Bosh, first of all, he also said that plays weren't drawn for him like they were in Toronto because he was the number one guy. But let's get a couple of things straight. Chris Bosh could hit a big shot. We saw that. Chris Bosh could get you a timely rebound. We saw that. And Chris Bosh was at least, Bam's a better shot blocker in my opinion, but Chris Bosh was not somebody that you could easily drive on either. He could alter shots as well. So I think that's something that Bam could work on, is being more of a Chris Bosh type and not, just doing whatever he does and being big, basically a putback guy is what he's getting paid max money to be a putback guy.
Exactly.
And even though his jump shot has improved, we can't argue that he's developed a very good jump shot. Again, it's not consistent. I'm going to take you back, Will. All right. You and I also, we love the Miami Heat, but we used to have an affinity for Michael's Bulls, back when we were younger.
Guilty.
Yeah, Michael's Bulls. And the Bulls in that first three-peat, they had a guy named Horace Grant. Horace Grant was their version of Bam. He was a good rebounder, good putback, good defender. But Horace, if he had to, could also create his own jump shot. He wasn't afraid to take it.
Yeah, no, Horace Grant, that mid-range jump shot, dude, was money.
It was, so that's, so.
And again, when you're talking about comparing him to a guy like Chris Bosh, I mean, there's really, if we're being honest, there's no real comparison. When you're talking about Chris Bosh was a guy who could take you off the dribble. Chris Bosh was a guy who could hit a three.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about big shots. Bam's got a long way to go.
No, I know. I'm not saying he's Chris Bosh. I'm just saying that Chris Bosh used to complain that plays weren't called specifically for him. Yeah. But when Chris Bosh needed to score, he scored.
Yeah,
you had to account for him on the offensive side of the ball.
Chris Bosh, before he ever got to the Heat, I mean, that guy was.
He was a 24-10 guy.
Yeah, multiple time All-Star and Toronto. I mean, that guy was an established star. And so, yeah, man, if we could get Bam to be anything. I don't know that he'll ever be, because again, Chris Bosh could shoot, from distance and the whole deal. I mean, listen, if he had half of Chris Bosh's offensive game at this point, he'd be earning his max deal. But again, that C word continues to come up, man. That consistency, word is going to be associated with him until he turns that corner. Again, he can't be a guy who's making max money. Like you say, it can't be just a putback guy,
Yeah.
or just really good on defense. No, we need more than that from him. And that's going to be on the staff this year, on him and the staff this offseason to really, work on that offensive game and come back next year and have him affect the game on the offensive side of the ball. It can't just be, once or twice a series, once every 5 or 6 games. I mean, he's got the ability to. It's not like he's not, he lacks the ability to do so. I think he just lacks the consistency at this point. That's something
Yeah.
they got to work on with him. Get him some go-to moves and the whole deal, but he's got to be able to create a shot a little bit better, man. Create again. I don't know what the answer is, whether it's a post-up game, whether it's a little, short, that little short to intermediate jump shot, to become more consistent, whatever the case may be. Something's got to be done, and he's got to be counted on more than he was this year, because definitely lacked the consistency this year to count on him as a true, second or third option. It just wasn't there. So
Yeah. I think the postal game is going to be key. I
yeah.
really do. I think especially since the NBA has gone smaller, in terms of, more 3-point shooters, I think that he could really be dominant if he develops a dominant style post-up game. And of course, the jump shot, he has the jump shot. He's just it's gotta fall more for him. But I think he could really do a lot of damage if he develops a better post game. That's just
especially
that's
with their
just me.
shooters, right? If he
Oh
posts up
yeah.
with the shooters that the Heat have, I mean, they collapse on him. I mean, he kicks it out. Now you have a wide open three. Hopefully he becomes that kind of player where you do have to worry about him down on the block, and he can free up some shooters to hit some knockdown jump shots and 3-pointers. But yeah, right now, man, he definitely leaves a little bit to be desired on the offensive side of the ball. Again, on defense, he's the man. There's no argument there. Maybe not a dominant rebounder yet, but in terms of an on the ball defender, a help defender, I mean, that guy switches and the way he comes off, one player and
Yeah.
immediately takes on another one. Great footwork, the whole deal. So no complaints there. Again, not a great rebounder. But on offense, yeah, he has to become more of a threat. He's essentially, again, he goes stretches where he just doesn't exist. And it's for them to be where they want to be. He's got to get better on that end for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I mean, we can't. That's up to the front office over there in Biscayne to do something about that. William, this was a lot of fun. Once again, I like to thank you for coming on again. I had a good time. What are you working on for the ATL? Like, what's going on your end?
Man, I'm waiting on some couple friends in Miami for all of us to kind of get on the same page. So nothing to report just yet. But hopefully here, I know training camp is coming up for coming up. Mandatory mini camps is coming up now in a couple weeks. So hopefully something closer to around that time. Have a little bit more news to report. But as of right now, I'm kind of in a holding pattern. So
Okay. Well, you're always welcome on here. You know that.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Always
Uh,
enjoy it, man. Always
Thanks.
enjoy it.
Likewise, man. Always have a good time. All right. So I just want to let everybody know. That this is, and I want to have him on because he's a great asset to the show, and he's a good friend of mine for a very long time. This is the season finale for 305 Sports Now on a weekly basis. All right. I will be taking a very, very, very mini hiatus. What that means is I won't be bringing you a weekly show until literally when football season starts. All right. But I will be bringing you some bonus episodes every so often. I will be bringing you some more interviews, hopefully. This allows me more time to build a YouTube channel as well. So I'd like to thank all of you out there that have been constantly listening to the show. You've been great. All right. I've gotten feedback from you as well. The guests have been on. Thank you so much for building, these first couple seasons. Coach Manny Matsakis, Channel 10's Clay Ferraro, Elio Tarago over at 305 Fights, William, yourself. I'd like to thank you as well for helping build the show as well. And if I'm forgetting anybody out there, please forgive me. I love you. Okay. So yeah, like I said, this upcoming summer, there will be some bonus episodes. I'm working on some things. Okay. I'm working on building a YouTube channel. So stay tuned for that. All right. So everybody, that's it for me. That's it for William. If you enjoyed the show, please not to download on Anchor, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. If you'd like to do a financial donation, because this is a listener supported podcast, please go to anchor.fm/305 Sports Now. Or if you'd like to join our Facebook family, again, 305 Sports Now on Facebook, hit that like button and you are a member of our family. All right, that's it for me, for William. Thank you very much once again for joining the show. Be safe and God bless. See you soon.